19 minutes after 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here with us on the Now Morning Show. We are going to change from having driver's permits to having driver's licenses. What does that mean? We're going to find out inside your spotlight on Now.
Now, Trinidad and Tobago is moving away from driver's permits towards the more secure and internationally recognized driver's licenses. The new licenses will be recognized by regional and international transport authorities and also include new and improved security features. With me to talk more about this is the Transport Commissioner, Mr. Clive Clark. Mr. Clark, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning, and thank you for having me and to your listening audience.
Of course. Now, Mr. Clark, first thing before we jump in, why the new licenses? Why now?
Well, first to begin, I think why now is absolutely relevant due to the fact that we do have a number of persons who have been expressing concerns. They have been writing to the commissioner. The minister has also raised issues whereby persons have been having issues with the term driver's permit. And we thought it necessary that we address this. This has been in the pipeline for the past 6 months or so, and therefore the minister thought it best that we make the necessary changes into the legislation, into the regulations to accommodate the change itself. So as you know, we have moved from driver's permit to driver's license to treat with the problem whereby persons are having issues in terms of presenting this document as a valid document for driving, or in some instances we have had situations, I myself experienced it, where I have issues where we had issues in terms of using your driver's permit as proof of ID to use your credit card in other jurisdictions. So we thought it necessary that we seek to benefit both sides with this new permit.
Of course. Now, one of the things...
license, let me be absolutely correct.
Now, I know one of the things the minister would have mentioned is, as well is that the license, they have some security features. Can you just give us some details about that?
Yes, well, one of the things, though, is that our objective in the Ministry of Roads and Transport, specifically the License Division, is to revolutionize and change what we do via this whole transformation exercise by bringing integrity into our systems, into our documents, and even into our processes. And therefore, the new driver's permit forms part of that. So the permit itself comes with what we call a unique background, right? And that in itself is unique to the licensing office. Within the permit, there are several microtext that is not visible to the average eyes. You need to use certain devices to raise those security features. We also use, more importantly, what we call a unique tactile. And that tactile itself is only produced on production. So what that means is in the event someone gets a hold on the blank card itself, they still cannot produce the exact permit within that we produce within the licensing office. And I need to also stress in terms of the barcode technology. Now, we know barcode is not a security in that sense, but barcode helps in terms of enhancing access to what we call centralized information for quick processing. One of the things, though, is all our permits are more or less accessible online. So with the major security, international standards will tell you is when you can validate a document from the central repository. And that's one of the major benefits with this new permit. You can access this permit online through any organization to validate its authenticity.
Right. Now, Mr. Clark, I know one of your pet peeves would have been the duplicates and the fraudulent activities with the cards. So do you think this new license, this new license, in fact, will get rid of that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Really. You know, I'm glad you raised that because sometimes I must say, honestly, it sickens me when I participate in road enforcement exercises and see persons present to you these documents which they have been making more or less or producing on the outside. And, you know, strange enough, though, when you look at some of the features, it really appears sometimes it's difficult if you are not experienced to identify the differences. And one of the major benefits we have now with our new technologies, you can validate again through our source data, and also through by the microtech security, we can more or less have better control over those issues.
Right. Now, does this mean, Commissioner, that because these new licenses are out, I'm going to have to rush to the licensing office quickly to get a new one?
No, definitely not. I'm glad you raised that, and it's important that we say that because we definitely don't want that rush in the licensing office. We need to understand that both driver's permit and driver's license are valid documents in Trinidad and Tobago and couldn't be used until the expiration date. So I want to say at this point in time, the ministry has no intention of seeking to replace the driver's permit, but we will more or less roll out the permit on a renewal basis, and the permit being lost, and one doing an endorsement meaning you are upgrading your class from class 3, 4, 5, or 6, etc.
So, Mr. Clark, if my license expires tomorrow, when I come down to the licensing office, I'm going to get a new license?
Let me answer that very carefully. You know, we are currently rolling out this system on a phase basis, so it depends on which site you go. Let me talk about the phase. We are currently issuing these permits at the Caroni licensing office. Yesterday, we have commenced at the Rising Road office. You know, we no longer have the St. James office. So the Rising Road site, we are issuing new permits. Today, we are starting in Point Fortin. So from this morning, persons visiting the Point Fortin office. Tomorrow, Arima and Sandy Grande. And then finally, later in the week, I think on the 19th, we visit, next week, we visit the San Fernando office.
Now, I know that you would have rolled out the licensing mobile buses a few months ago. Is it going to be available on the buses as well, or only at the stationed licensing offices?
Right, that's right. At this morning, at the point in time, the bus will be in use at the Caroni licensing office, and the bus is currently equipped to issue the new driver's license at the point in time. And the bus will be visiting the Santa Cruz area from next week Tuesday. And that opportunity will be the first instance of whereby we will be issuing those permits on the mobile buses external to the Caroni licensing office.
Right. Now, Mr. Clark, as you mentioned, people don't need to rush to the licensing offices to get this new license. So what that means is there will be a new system for the licenses and an existing one for the permits. I mean, do you see any problems or challenges managing these both systems?
No, our developers have basically developed the system whereby the central management system operates on a hybrid basis, so it's definitely not cumbersome for the staff. The same tool we are using the same centralized system we are using to produce the permits. Just the output is different, or the size that are not yet ready.
And leading up to this, we can be assured that the licensing officers and those at the office would have been trained to make the transition as well.
Oh yes, definitely, and this is why it was absolutely necessary that we roll out the system via phase basis, because we are both conducting training and as well as seeking to commence the system live at the same time with full support from the Ministry of Works, ICT department.
Now, as you mentioned, the new process for the license, how will it be able to track, let's say, for example, demerit points or sanctions on the permits?
Well, let me say, the merit points or sanction, once you have possession of a driver's permit, and let me just use for example, an insurance agency or a bank, you may present your permit as a form of ID, etc. Once you have access to the driver's permit and the date of birth of the holder by having possession of the permit, you can go online now as we speak and access the records via our, if you go to Google and you type driver's permit validation, it takes you to that site and you can view the current live status of the demerit points or sanctions issued to that driver.
So the licenses wouldn't change the process of checking the update on somebody's permit?
Oh, definitely not. It will. It will not.
Okay. Now, you mentioned legislation earlier, and I know this might be more for the Minister of Works and Transport, but do you know when the legislation will change, or do you know how it's going to change?
Well, I'm looking at legislation, and we're talking about legislation in context of driver's license, and I must say the legislation has already been changed, because for us to use a new name itself, the legislation has already been changed. It was done in a unique way, whereby it allowed both forms, when I say both forms in the context here of the output, the look-alike, the DP itself, to now exist within the environment, to therefore allow the phase rollout. So both driver's permit and driver's license are now valid documents from the being issued, and the legislation has already been changed by the regulations.
Nice. Now, when we get the new license, what is going to happen to the permits that we have? Do we have to bring them in, or can we keep them?
Oh, no. Matter of fact, you do know when you conduct a transaction at the licensing office, for example, for renewal or an endorsement, we keep the old one. So basically, once you visit the licensing officer, conduct that transaction, it's normally practice for us to retain the old permit.
Right. Now, I know it's still early yet, Mr. Clark, but what has the response been thus far? Can you give us some feedback on the ground?
Well, I will tell you, when we look up in terms of transformations of new products, we will normally get those who are for and those who are against. Up to recently, I was looking at some of the comments, some of the video clippings, and a number of persons, even just before we were waiting for this program, a number of persons are thanking the ministry, thanking the minister, thanking management for the foresight and the vision of implementing such a system, because we do have persons experiencing the challenges I identified earlier. One of the things we need to keep in mind is that we are trying to bring a licensing office into what we call that global market, that global environment, where our citizens must feel comfortable when they travel, and they must have documents of an international standard. And therefore, I think though that I will say the positive feedbacks are overwhelming, and we are pleased with what we have been doing at the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Right. And Mr. Clark, you mentioned it's going to be rolled out on a phased basis. So phased basis meaning at different licensing offices across the country. What about Tobago?
That's right. Oh yes, Tobago, let me just say this. The intention is to finish all deployments by now on the 20th of this month. And Tobago, definitely they are factored in there. We are looking at Tobago either the 19th or the 20th of this month.
Nice. And I was just wondering, Commissioner, because you mentioned training, you mentioned new system, well, not new system, but the integration of the old into the new. I mean, how much did this cost to, undertake this transition?
We have to be so careful when we talk about cost, because one of the things that I heard the minister would have mentioned, though, and which is a fact, as technology increases, costs go down, and therefore the cost for this system, I can point out at this point in time, the DP itself it's cheaper than what we paid, what we were previously paying for the older permits. I think it basically a permit, when we put all the factors into play, may basically cost approximately about $5.30 for one, when in the past we used to pay about $5.90 per permit when you put all the overheads, etc. The equipment, the current equipment for the previous system, because I say current because it's still in use, those equipment are more or less outdated, out of warranty, and therefore it was absolutely necessary that we invest in the hardware for the system. And by and large, overall, this system would have barely cost the ministry about $1.2 million. It's really a minimum figure for such massive achievement.
So, Commissioner, is it that the license, is it that they are cheaper than the permits?
Yes, the output itself. Yes, oh yes, definitely it is.
Okay. Well, Commissioner, anything else?
It's based on the security mechanism which we are using, and also due to the fact though that we are talking about a permit and the security features from 4 to 5 years ago. So therefore, as I said, as technology increase, you will find these prices sometimes go down.
Right. And Commissioner, finally, anything else you want to add? Anything you want to let the public know before we close?
Oh, I want to take the opportunity, just to market a new service we'll be bringing out very shortly, commencing next week. The mobile buses itself, we will be adding requests for certified copies, change of color, change of engine. Look forward to see that additional service on the mobile buses. Previously, we were simply working on what we call the permit transaction, renewal of permits, lost permit, etc. And within by the middle of next month, we will be providing the opportunity whereby persons can come to the mobile buses and the communities and conduct vehicle transfers also.
Great. Well, Commissioner, thank you so much for coming on the Now Morning Show and just sharing, a lot of the details about the new licenses and how we can access it. Yes, not to rush down before, but of course we can wait until our permits expire. So thank you so much.
Right. You're welcome. Most welcome. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. And that was Transport Commissioner Mr. Clive Clark just sharing details about the new licenses which are currently on stream. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.